Welcome to the 41st episode of the Cycle 365, recorded on July 13th, 2020. I am Kodey Stauffer.
I am Simon Villanos.
Hey, and I'm Liam Hughes.
And we got a pretty diverse palette for you guys today. We'll be talking UFC, the conferences opting out of fall sports at the collegiate level, top 5 offensive linemen of all time, and another edition of Good Take, Bad Take. But as I said, we're going to start off with UFC, and we're going to be talking the main card fights today. Now, I'm pretty sure all of us caught recaps. Liam and I actually got to watch a full fight for sure. Thank you to the UFC posting a free fight from this Saturday. But we're going to talk about them in the order that they were presented. So up first, we got, I think it's Ribas versus Vanzant. Vanzant. So this was the strawweight fight, right, fellas?
Yeah.
So I don't think that there is a belt on the line, but it didn't really matter because the fight was over in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, so that Petyr Vanzant versus Amanda Ribas fight, I'm pretty sure everyone who follows like UFC and whatnot and knows about Petyr Vanzant, I would say, like, this is gonna suck to hear, but this is just reality. Like, Dana White pretty much pushes Petyr Vanzant to, like, not the top card fights or like the super important fights, but he definitely, like, you know, kind of like puts her in positions against fighters that are way better, just because, if I'm being honest, she's a pretty face and a lot of people like know her for that. I would say more people outside of UFC fans would know her for that in general. And so this wasn't a fair fight at all. Like, nobody really expected Petyr Vanzant to do much. She was like a huge underdog, and she had a plan to prevent her from taking her to the ground. But honestly, she's just Ribas. I mean, she's just a better fighter, you know, all around and whatnot. And, you know, Vanzant hasn't really had best couple outings the last couple times, and she doesn't really fight that often. She fights maybe once a year. That might be stretching it a little bit, you know. And so there were really no surprises that, you know, she got submitted in the first round by armbar. Yeah, and, you know, this was the last one of her UFC contract, and, you know, based on what Dana White said, basically saying that he hopes she enjoys free agency, I think this might be the last we see of Petyr Vanzant in the UFC for now.
Liam, what did you have to say about the fight?
I would say that she definitely looked way out of her depth. I don't want to, insult her or any fans or anything, but it just looked like she was not ready, essentially, for that level of competition. And it was proven.
I mean, just looking at the records here, you know, of Ribas being 10-1 now, so probably 9-1 before the fight, and Petyr being 8-5 now, so 8-4. Like, I feel like that's a pretty big discrepancy. I mean, maybe the fact that it looks like 8-5 to 10-1, but like, I don't know. That's just like a lot of losses. Like, it's almost 500, you know, which you don't see a lot at the UFC level. But to comment on Simon's point, there are some rumors that Vanzant is going to sign to the same contract that Vanderford fights for.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all the best to her, you know. Like, I've been like a huge fan. I've known of her for a really long time, since she started out, you know, and she was always a solid enough fighter, but never like, you know, like super awesome or anything, or like great. Like, she was always known for like being just a good person in general, and just someone that a lot of people liked. And she kind of just had that charisma, you know, that kind of drew fans, even though she wasn't the best fighter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's pretty fair.
Best of luck to her.
Yeah, hopefully she finds more success in wherever she goes next, and finds more fair competition, and just overall has a better time, and hopefully doesn't get armbarred in 36 seconds or something.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll definitely see more of Ribas, though.
Oh, for sure.
No doubt.
So Is that all that we have for that first fight?
Yeah, pretty
All right.
much. I mean, there wasn't really. I feel like this one went as expected, and there wasn't much to it.
All right. So up next we have Andrade, I believe it's pronounced.
Yeah.
I try and repeat what the announcers say versus Namajunas. Is that or
Namajunas.
what'd you say? Namajunas?
Yeah.
Okay, Namajunas, which I thought it was probably my favorite fight to watch, if I'm being completely honest. And this was a rematch for those who don't know, where Andrade took the first one back in Brazil. So she had a little bit of like, I mean, it's not the same to call it like home field advantage, but there's definitely something to be said of that, fan presence and stuff like that. So Andrade took the first one when they first matched up, and I thought that this rematch was the most entertaining fight of the night.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it was most definitely up to, it was really fun to watch. I think both fighters are, I don't want to say super different, but they're different enough where it's entertaining to the degree that they just like kind of complement each other. You know what I mean? Like Rose Namajunas, she is very, I would say the first 2 rounds at least, she came off as very, polished off. So she was obviously, I don't want to say way taller, but she was definitely taller than Jessica Andrade. And she used that height beautifully. She had great footwork. It was extremely smooth. She kept her distance. She didn't let Andrade get her hands on her, which, by the way, in the 3rd round, when that happened, it kind of really started going downhill really fast. It wasn't the greatest look. But yeah, no, I thought this was an excellent fight. What do y'all think about this fight, though? Because I know some people felt like Andrade might have, edged her out at the end there, but I don't agree with that.
Kodey, go ahead.
I think that Namajunas won this fight. I think it was close. Like I don't want to say that people who think Andrade won this fight are wrong, like flat out wrong. I mean, we saw how Namajunas looked at the end of the fight. Like she got like her face split open. It was a good fight. There were a lot of connections, and that's part of the reason why it was one of my favorite fights, is because it was so close and because there was so much contact, because it didn't really feel like a dull moment. Like a lot of the other fights, like there's seriously 10 to 15 seconds where nothing happens, but I don't feel like that happened in this fight. So I don't want to flat out say that, like Andrade lost this fight 100%, like it was close. So I don't want to discount what other people thought of potentially Andrade winning, but I still think that she lost. So
yeah, I would say that Andrade lost. I'm not. It was definitely close. It was super close. I wouldn't say it was close enough to contest by any means, but it was a good victory for Namajunas, and good little revenge story. Always nice to see those in UFC. They're pretty common actually, and that's one of my favorite parts of UFC.
I was gonna say I would not mind a 3rd match between the two of them, but yeah. I think that'd be awesome if somehow there were like I don't know, like really 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 high stakes. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a end of a book kind of thing.
Right, a little best of 3 action. Whoever loses just retires.
I mean,
basically,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this fight was really entertaining, and I agree that Namajunas definitely won. But that 3rd round was definitely telling, I would say, because Andrade really he turns it up a lot, and she was already trying pretty hard throughout the first 2 rounds, I would say. But Namajunas just did a really good job staying disciplined, keeping her distance, tagging her and moving and whatnot. But Andrade definitely caught Namajunas, I want to say, with either an over or a straight. And she it looked like she slept Namajunas for a quick second, but she didn't. And she eventually turned that into a pretty aggressive takedown, which Namajunas just my opinion, just barely escaped in the third round. And she kind of made up for that with a little takedown on her own in the last 40 seconds or so of that third round. But it wasn't like, it wasn't super impressive. It was just like for the cards, And if I'm being honest, if there was a third fight, I think Andrade would probably take it, because I did kind of believe in Namajunas, not most of the fight, but oh my gosh, the undiscipline near the end there was a little scary. She definitely almost got slept, and I feel like something people should keep an eye on.
No, for sure that last fight or part of the fight where they were just on the ground, just wrestling the whole time. It looked like it could have been anybody's match, and it looked like it could have been anybody's disqualification or knockout. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, in a 3-round fight, it's really hard to, at least for me, it's really hard to give someone the entire fight if they just win one round, right? Because we all agree here that Namajunas won the first 2 rounds of this fight, like convincingly, And the fact that Andrade's barrage in the 3rd round was enough to even, consider that she would win, is a testament to it. But I think that, if you lose the majority of rounds, especially if you're doing like a title bout that's 5 rounds, and if you lose the first 4 rounds, you have to knock out the other person to win the fight. In my opinion, that's what it should be. Which almost happened, but not quite. So I think that's a good summary of this fight and this rematch, is almost but not quite for Andrade. And Namajunas got to keep her guard up in the 3rd round if they fight again.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because I think after she got not knocked down, she got taken down. There's a difference there. After she got taken down, you could tell she was trying to make up those points for some reason, even though she definitely had the 2 rounds, and it kind of just led her to not being as clean footwork wise, to getting way too close, and just not being as good of a defensive fighter as she could have been. And that's just something she could work on. That's a thing that a lot of fighters have to go through, knowing when to relax and when to not push the tempo if you don't need to. And because honestly that does take some, it takes a little bit away from their health long-term wise, and then short-term wise as well. So that's just a little learning thing. If I had to critique Namajunas at all, but altogether I did feel like she had a very clean and sound, technically sound fight for her.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I like I said, I would really want a trilogy for these two. I think that, like you said, Simon, they're complementary in a way, in the contrast that they bring to the table. So you get to see a little bit of everything when these two fight. I mean, the first fight ended on just a complete head slam, so that's quality entertainment. So maybe that should be the title of this episode. Give us a trilogy for Andrade and Namajunas.
I'd like to see it. Honestly, I would. Hats off to Namajunas, because that first fight was pretty devastating for her. That's a pretty bad way to lose, especially in Brazil. So this was a pretty big confidence booster for her.
Definitely. I don't have anything else on this fight. Do either of you?
Nope.
All right. Give us a trilogy. But on to the first title bout. By the way, correction to the Ribas fight, that was women's flyweight, and the Andrade Namajunas one was strawweight. Anyways, for the bantamweight fight between Jan and Aldo, this one, we talked about this a little bit before the show, was not close.
No, it really wasn't. I mean, Aldo did his best. He is the veteran. I'll give him that credit. He is the veteran, and Petyr Jan is more of an up and comer. Which, by the way, I'm a little bit of a fan now. I was pretty impressed. But anyways, Aldo definitely, he didn't lie down either. Though he still has it with those kicks. Like, some of those kicks were so devastating. Like, I'm not gonna lie. There are a couple kicks in, I'm gonna say either the second, the third round where I was like, all right, well, Peter Yan isn't defending and protecting himself as well as he could have, you know. But you know, he eventually fixed that in the later rounds. It was still a pretty, entertaining fight to a degree, though.
I don't know. I just don't think it was as close as the other ones that we're going to talk about.
Oh, well, yeah, no, compared to them, definitely not.
So, and even compared to, like, I think as far as, like, splitting up this UFC 251 into, like, competitive and non-competitive, Aldo and Yan fall on the side of Ribas and Vanzant. So, if you were to draw a line in the sand of competitive versus the ones that weren't super close.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I agree. But at the same time, Aldo, in my opinion, after rewatching the rounds and looking at some other analysis of it, I think Aldo most definitely got at least 1 or 2 rounds, though. I felt like he definitely took those rounds, and Peter Yan didn't do enough to win the round, honestly. And those are more of the middle rounds. The 4th and 5th rounds was where he most definitely put it away. Arguably, sooner than the refs ruled, but
So, I saw some reactions on Twitter, and we talked about a little bit about you guys think that the fight should have been ended sooner than it was. Well, what is your guys' thoughts behind it, Simon or Liam?
Go ahead, Liam.
I think it was pretty obvious by the end of the fight, by the last 2-3 minutes, that Aldo was gone. Aldo was not fighting anymore. Yes, he was still protecting himself, but he was not defending himself. In the same sense as, like, he was not fighting back. He was not competing. He was just turtled up. He was in a shell. He was just trying to protect his life at that point, and his body. And his ego as well, I'd assume, by not tapping out.
Yep. I mean, yeah, well, absolutely. I agree. I mean, honestly, we could even go as far back as the first round where Yan had Aldo on the floor. And he almost won it in that first round because in those waning seconds, he was pretty much in the same position as he would be in the end, grounding and pounding. And it was, there was definitely... I wouldn't have been mad if the refs stopped the fight right there, but I get why they went on, and I thought that was a good call. But there was definitely, a little bit of an argument for a stoppage there. And then, in the 5th round, I would say, I think that's what Liam was referring to. Yeah, there was most definitely, I counted it because I wanted to be sure, because it just seemed like, as a viewer, I got pretty uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie, and I hate Jose Aldo. I've never liked him. I've always been a Conor McGregor fan too, though, so there's that. But that's why. And he's always been someone I didn't hate, but even that wasn't enough to justify what I saw for pretty much a straight 4 minutes of his skull getting pounded in, like hammer fist after hammer fist. And I mean, the thing about UFC fighters, well, not just UFC fighters, but fighters in general, that's a pretty tough way to go. Like, losing by ground and pound is not only is it painful, but it is most definitely one of the more humiliating ways of going. And I'm not gonna lie, man, props to Aldo, because in minute 2 or maybe even minute 1, I definitely would have given up, but he kind of just hung in there, and the refs didn't stop it, and he kept pounding on his neck and on his head. And I'm just gonna say it, I could definitely tell that Peter Yan was kind of holding back a little bit between punches, just because if he was to continuously hit the dude as hard as he could, he would have most definitely either paralyzed him or caused some significant damage to him. And it was really hard to watch, but eventually they stopped it after 4 minutes of straight obliteration.
See, and that's something that, so Liam and I watched the fight together, and that's a good word to use, is uncomfortable, because he's just oh my gosh, why are they still fighting? But I feel so in UFC, we've talked about it before, Simon, right? Where people think that the refs end the fight too early, right? And then you have things where the ref didn't end the fight soon enough. And I think that like where that line kind of has to come in is also like I think that there needs to be like almost an education for like fighters. Like they know that getting the snot kicked out of you for a living is going to be damaging to your body, but like that, I think that there has to be some sort of accountability there. Like Liam mentioned, you know, Aldo was defending his pride more than he was defending his body by that point in the fight, right? Like you got to know, like, okay, I'm not even moving. I'm not rolling around or anything to try and even avoid this. Like you gotta tap out. And like that's also a reflection of, you know, like masculinity and ego in our society. But it is a thing that needs to be addressed, I think, because, you know, like, because sometimes, you know, if a ref thinks the fight is over, like it's personal judgment for a ref, right? Like you're never going to get the same call between two refs, and you can't have one ref work every single fight, you know? Like there's just literally no way to find consistency with that unless you like, I don't know, maybe attach like heartbeat monitors or something. Like it's not possible, you know? So I think that there has to be accountability for the fighters, you know, in the same way that, okay, if I don't tap out, my arm's going to break. It's okay, if I don't tap out, this dude could ruin my whole life if I keep getting hit in the neck like this, you know? Like they have to be equated to be the same thing, I think. And then refs should call the fight when, you know, when the fight's over, if that makes sense. Like KO or submission.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but you know, I think we all know this, that that's definitely, you know, a cultural thing that would need to be fixed. You know, like actually, you know, a couple weeks ago when I came up and visited, we talked about it. How I said personally, I would take much more. I'm not going to say exactly what I said. I said personally, I would take much more damage to my body than ever throw out the towel myself. You know, and look, I acknowledge, you know, that version of toxic masculinity for sure. There are just some people that are like that they don't want to be the ones to throw out the towel. And I think, you know, at that point, it's most definitely up to either their corner, because they can, I'm pretty sure in the UFC, to throw the towel for them, or for the, you know, for the refs to do it. And I'm not gonna lie, like in minute 3, or actually, honestly, by minute 2, I was pretty much done with the fight. I was like, okay, this fight should be over by now. And then a minute goes by, then another minute goes by, and it's like, okay, this is way over. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like it was way over the line, because it was like, you know, punches and stuff that were getting blocked. There were pretty clean shots to the head, like I would say, for a straight minute or two. And by that point, like it's more than enough to call it. And if they're mad, they're mad. But like, you could thank them later for preventing their brain damage, because it wasn't like he was really protecting himself that much, you know?
Right.
I agree that it's definitely a cultural thing, but I do think that it needs to be addressed. And maybe that's even a part of like the education provided by UFC. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what their initiation or quote rookie program looks like. You know, like I can tell you it's not anything like the NFL or the NBA or insert leagues here, you know, that teach their athletes about, you know, how to live as an athlete, and then also the dangers of being an athlete too. You know, like there's actual warning signs basically in those leagues that give in-depth stuff. And then I think that part of it is that your corner needs to be like trained professionals that, you know, I mean, a lot of them are comprised of former fighters, right? So it's up to the corner. Like, you need to protect your fighter. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Like that's, if you're the trainer, do you want to see Jose Aldo never fight again? Or do you want to see him get out of this fight alive? You know what I'm saying? So like, even if like that's a tough call, like if you don't see the ref doing it, then that's on you. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that I guess what I'm trying to say is there needs to be more accountability across the board than just on the refs, if that makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I just think with where the UFC right now is probably very comparable to the NFL of the 80s or 90s. You know, the Paul Tagliabue, right? When he was the commissioner of that era. You know, just a little, maybe not even a little, but pretty ignorant. And they probably know, you know, some of these things like, yeah, we should probably do that, but we won't. And you know, what are you going to do about it? And so that's just kind of where I see where the UFC is compared to other, you know, sports leagues. Very 90s or 80s NFL like as of right now, I would say.
I mean, it is only like 30 years old.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it would make sense for it to be basically in its troubled youth stage, I'll call it.
You could say that, yeah. Sure. That's all I have to say about it, though.
Yeah, same. Mainly I'm not going to just throw the ref under the bus. I mean, yes, it's also the ref's job, you know, but, you know, there should be like it came down to the ref at the last second, right? Like if the ref didn't step in then, what was going to happen? You know, like it could have been worse because from the looks of it, it didn't look like Aldo was going to tap out, and it didn't look like the trainers were going to throw in the towel, right? Like if they didn't do it already, they weren't going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, absolutely.
And that's, you know, the issue is that there came and passed several attempts or several times in that fight where the towel could have been thrown in for Aldo, and he would have nobody would have blamed him for it. You know what I mean? He's protecting his ego and his honor for nothing. Like nobody's going to hold it against him for tapping out when he's losing that badly. You know, In fact, that's the arguably just completely right thing to do. It's like, just tap out, man. It's not worth, again, as we've talked about, bodily harm. It's not worth permanent damage to your body. And, you know, the ref failed that test. Aldo himself failed that test. And, you know, thankfully Jan still kind of failed the test too, but like thankfully he was seeing what was happening and wasn't putting himself into that position where he was in that killer stage anymore. You know what I mean? Like he was pulling his punches for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like he definitely was. It would have been harder to watch if you could tell that he was going full at his neck like that, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Way harder to watch. So no, credit to him just a little bit.
Sure. Good win. Good win. That's what I have to say and like I believe it was Simon who mentioned it earlier. Jan was in that same position where he was standing over Aldo twice this fight in the first and fifth round, and man, if only he just ended it in the first round, honestly. Like he definitely could have. He's got a mean swing, by the way. Jan does.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like I think he's going to probably like future segment on Good Take Bad Take. I feel like Jan is going to be the champ for a couple of fights, honestly. Like we'll say 3.
Oh. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I was extremely impressed. Thought he was very polished off. His attack game, his stand-up game was really good, and on the ground he was no joke at all either. So
yeah, he's a nasty fighter. I'm excited to see more of him.
Yeah, he's definitely better at the stand-up, but you know, he'd prefer to stay standing up, but he can go to the ground if he needs to. And of course, this take revolves around timing and what's happening. You know, I mean, we'll get to it a bit later, but there's definitely some question marks regarding the society that we live in. But anywho, after that, arguably the most controversial fight of the night, Volkanovski versus Holloway. What are your guys' initial takes from this fight? And what, you know, the controversy comes from who the decision went to, being that Volkanovski won. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think Volkanovski won.
Okay. I mean, is that it?
Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got. No, he's I think his leg game was so so dominant that I think that any advantage that I can't think of the other guy's name.
Holloway.
That Holloway had just didn't. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I mean, at one point, I think it was like Volkanovski either threw or hit like 70 plus kicks or something, and these weren't just regular kicks. You know, these are big hits. These are damaging kicks. So, I think that he took the game with his legs.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I could see where the controversy was. You know, by the way, I do think Volkanovski won it. It was close though, because Holloway, didn't he knock down Volkanovski twice in the first couple rounds?
Yes.
Yeah, and so the deal with that is that, you know, Volkanovski, like he kind of shook it off and he got up pretty quickly. You know, when they're scoring, you know, for the UFC, like, you know, obviously they grade things differently based on damage and stuff like that. And if you really want to go into depth to that, you could do your own research. But you know, Volkanovski definitely got up way faster than Holloway probably expected. Like it wasn't even like it was a pretty smooth get up. I'm not gonna lie. And then he got right back into it and without missing a beat. And so, even though Holloway did put him down to the mat twice, even if you watch it, it wasn't like it was the hardest, like, you know, hits or whatever. It was just like, you know, hey, he caught him. He still was, you know, there enough to get up. And then, you know, bring Holloway to the ground, right? He had 3 takedowns in the third, fourth, and fifth round at the end there.
I think.
Yeah, something like that. Either way, in the fifth round, he rallied and most definitely closed the fight, though. Like, it really wasn't that close by the fifth round. So, I think, you know, Volkanovski, he did his job. Holloway, it was a really good effort. But, you know, he didn't finish. Just being honest, he just didn't finish the fight. What do you think, Kodey?
First off, apparently Holloway didn't have any knockdowns. They didn't count them as knockdowns. Just looking here at the box score, and you know, I guess maybe it was because we were watching wait, that wasn't the full fight that we watched, was it, Liam?
We watched the full fight.
We watched the full fight. Maybe I just misremembered, but yeah, this wasn't really close. Looking here at the box score, like I'm not gonna lie, when I initially watched it, you know, I thought Holloway might win. You know, I was like, hey, Holloway, you know, he got some clean strikes in against Volkanovski, you know. I felt like his hits had more of an impact, but that's not how it was tallied up. You know, if we're looking at the box score here, just talking about straight up numbers, there were no knockdowns on either side. Volkanovski landed 139 strikes to Holloway's 111, and Volkanovski connected on 50% versus 40. There was 137 significant strikes from Volkanovski versus 102 from Holloway. And Volkanovski got 3 takedowns. So, I mean, if you chop it up like that, then it's definitely Volkanovski's fight. I guess for me, what you can look at with some of the controversy with Holloway is that, you know, I feel like Holloway did land some good punches. I think that he played a pretty good defensive game against Volkanovski. I mean, Volkanovski did land 3 takedowns, but that was out of 9 attempts versus 0 from Holloway. You know what I'm saying? So Holloway played a great defensive game, in my opinion. But I don't think that's not how he needed to beat Volkanovski. He needed to not leave a doubt, and he didn't do that. So that's why Volkanovski won the fight, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I 100% agree. Holloway, he had his moments. Like, there are some really nice flashes in the pan between rounds and whatnot, but you got to finish. Like, you can't let him just linger around, because he will most definitely score on you doing that. You know, so, and Holloway, I get he's like an older fighter, a veteran fighter. Like, this scenario, I guess, could be comparable to the Jan versus Aldo fight. But, you know, as the veteran, you kind of got to push it. You know, you can't let a young guy just whatever he wants to you and then, like, not retaliate back consistently. You know what I mean? And I feel like I saw that a lot from Holloway. crazy that they didn't count those two knockdowns, because they most definitely look like knockdowns. Like he hit him and he fell down and then got back up real quick. Maybe that's it, but I mean, I don't know. But I mean, it should say all you need to really know about this fight then, if they didn't count those, you know.
Where do you think Holloway goes from here, seeing that he's lost 3 of his last 4 matches?
Oof. Of the last 4, really? I didn't think it was like that. I mean, I don't think he's gonna retire anytime soon. He seems like one of those fighters that'll fight it out for a little bit longer. So he'll probably get, you know, one or more. I'd say at least one more serious, you know, fight chance or whatever eventually. You know, you got to get a fight to get your confidence back under your belt, and then that opportunity will present itself. But you know, he is kind of up there, I feel, and he's had a solid career, so it is what it is.
There's some talk of him moving up to lightweight and bulking up, but I don't know if that's a good idea. He
shouldn't do that.
He already looks, I don't know. He already doesn't even look like he should be in featherweight, TBH. So
yeah, just. You know, once you get old enough, I think we all know this, it's harder to move between weight classes, so you might as well stick it out with this weight class because you kind of have to, I feel like, by this point.
I just don't see Holloway competing for a belt with how loaded this featherweight weight class is.
Yeah. I mean, okay, well, I don't think he's going to compete for a belt. I feel like he'll fight somebody who's an up-and-comer, as like, for that up-and-comer, like beating Holloway would be a stepping stone type of thing. Like, hey, I beat a veteran type of fight, you know?
And there's plenty of room for that. And, you know, UFC needs that. They need that role of like the veteran fighter who in his heyday was really good, but now he's kind of just one of those stepping stone fighters. And, you know, there's still a lot of respect to be gained there, and there's still a lot of money to be earned there on those cards. So, you know, there's still a career for him in this, even if he is on a downward spiral.
That's pretty true, though. I mean, no, we've been kind of rough, but I feel like that's pretty true. There's always that guy that needs to be, you know, the torch hander. So I guess
right.
that's Holloway's job as of now, which sounds a little depressing, but you never know.
Yeah, maybe he'll pull it back together and, you know, make another title run. Or
yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or, you know, he upsets like an up-and-comer, and there's a lot of money to be made there for sure. There's still money to be made, I feel.
It just depends on what Holloway wants to do.
Yeah,
of course.
So, I don't have anything else for this fight. Are we on to the... I mean, they were called the co-main, but the main fight of the night.
Yeah. Do it.
So the last fight of the night was Kamaru Usman, who was supposed to face somebody else. I'm blanking on his name, but luckily, because they tested positive for COVID, Masvidal stepped in. So this wasn't the fight that we were originally supposed to get, but I think it turned out to be an entertaining fight that Usman definitively won. I mean, it came down to decision, but Usman definitely had his way during this fight. Anyone disagree with that?
No.
Oh, I mean, did anybody really expect Jorge Masvidal to win this fight if, you know, under a week's notice, really, because he has to travel?
No, I think he did well. I think he even surpassed expectations, all things considered, honestly. Like, just being kind of thrown into the fire, like, he still put up a good fight, you know what I'm saying? And it still sold pretty highly on pay-per-view, might I add on. Like, people weren't disappointed. They weren't like, oh, it's Masvidal. They're like, oh, okay, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, no, for sure. I mean, honestly, he did his role. He did his job. You know, he challenged Usman for sure. A pretty solid fight. Didn't they go all 5 rounds?
Yeah, They went all 5 rounds, but it was unanimous decision.
Right, yeah, right. So, I mean, he still did his job, just like we were talking about with Holloway and Volkanovski. Like, okay, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but, Jorge Masvidal is definitely not young Jorge Masvidal, if you know what I mean. He is definitely at that stage where he himself is a torch carrier, torch changer, whatever you want to say. Like, he's a kind of an older veteran who can be seen as a stepping stone fight to some fighters, and it sucks to say it that way, but it really kind of came off as that way, in my opinion, to me. And Usman, hey, all the credit to him. It was a solid, win, because Masvidal is always going to be ready to go, and he isn't that old yet, so he could still go. But I mean, let's not get it twisted. Like, this wasn't most how should I say this? It was entertaining. I just wouldn't say it was the most important out of the night to a degree, No,
I definitely agree, because no one expected Masvidal to win the belt. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, like we said, he had 6 days notice for this fight. So there's a lot that you can't accomplish there as far as, preparing for a fight strategy. Like, at that point, you just gotta hope for the best, honestly. And Usman is no slouch either. Like, he'd have been the favorite probably no matter who he was facing off against, right? So, and he left no doubt either. I mean, he was an absolute animal through all 5 rounds. I mean, I saw this stat where Usman controlled the clinch for 10 minutes of the 25-minute fight.
Jeez.
Like, he just kind of bullied Masvidal, especially on the ground. And, even standing up, I mean, Masvidal came out like kind of hot, but that you got to end the fight before it starts, honestly, if you're coming into the challenger's ring.
For sure.
Yeah, the champ's ring, I mean.
Yeah, for sure. And Usman, that's just his game, clinching people, manhandling them. Like, I wouldn't say he's the flashiest, like, knockout artist or, like, someone who could definitely be a submit artist, but he kind of just wears you down. And it's, like, honestly, like, just from personal experience, I would say that those are the fighters that are, like, the most annoying to go up against, the kind that, like, they could wait the long game, right? But they're not going to wait too long, and they're going to make their point, and then they're just going to kind of drag you around and, like, just dominate you. Like, I think it's most comparable to, like, how an anaconda kills, like, kind of slowly, but they slowly just squeeze the life out of you type of fighting,
Yeah, definitely.
I would even go as far as to say that those type of fighters are, like, the most worrisome in my mind. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, going up against somebody who's a submission artist or, just ready to knock people out. It's like, well, I'm either going to get knocked out or I'm not, right? But going up against the fighters who are really super technical and super patient with it, it's like, you really have to build a game plan about it.
Yeah. I mean, no, absolutely. And those fighters are usually the best conditioned ones because they have to be. Because they can't, execute their game plan if they're not, physically there to execute their game plan. You know what I mean? Like, they got to have all their energy and whatnot. Oh my gosh, who's the fighter who fought Justin Gaethje in that last UFC matchup that you and me talked about, Kodey? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking out on his name. Anyways, that fighter, hold up, Tony Ferguson? Is that his name? Right? Yeah, it's Ferguson.
Yes, Tony Ferguson.
Sure. Ferguson, in my opinion, was one of those fighters. In my opinion, though, Ferguson definitely had, more knockout ability, but he was one of those fighters kind of similar to Usman, at least stylistic wise, that, kind of just wears you down, is a little unconventional in a way, and it's really annoying to go up against because you can't just, like, you as the fighter against, or as the opponent against one of them, you can't just force the issue because that's how you make a mistake. You kind of got to be disciplined with it. And, those fighters they're so dangerous. I'll tell you what. So, I mean, I look forward to seeing Usman fight a guy that's, guess maybe a little bit more closer to his age or career-wise, at the same spot as him. But this was a solid fight, though. Usman definitely manhandled Masvidal, though. So, y'all have anything to add, or?
Kodey.
No, I agree. I don't have anything else to say about this fight or any of the fights because I didn't watch the prelims. So,
yeah. Yeah, me neither. I love covering UFC. It was really fun, actually, looking into all these fight stuff like that, for these. I mean, I myself am a fighter, so, well, okay, not an active fighter, but, have background in that, so I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice change of pace, and it's nice to have some live sports to talk about, so.
True.
But if that's all for this segment, coming up next, we have conferences opting to only play in conference. Coming up.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the 41st episode of the Cycle 365. We are now going to talk some college sports. Because, I feel like we've talked a lot about college football, but the news that has come out in the last week definitely involves college football and all fall sports for that matter. And so we're going to start. I'm just going to run it off real quick, and then I'll let y'all react to it. I think for sure the Ivy League was the first one to say they were gonna cancel fall sports and not play this fall at least. So that counts, the sports that would count for is basketball, football, volleyball, just to name a few. Those are some of the major ones. And this is the first time that Harvard and Yale won't be playing each other since the 1940s. Obviously that was during World War II. There you go. So that's a pretty big deal. And then right after they announced that, like pretty soon after, I would say, the Big Ten announced that they would play conference-only games, and the Pac-12 announced that they would play conference-only games. And that's for all sports, for sure. And that actually, affects a lot of different teams as well, including our very own University of Northern Colorado. Lastly, I think it was just announced today, I want to say. One of the FCS schools, like Division 1 but lower Division 1, the Patriot League announced that they were not going to play fall sports. Or is it just football? It might just be football, actually. Yeah. No, it's fall sports. Yeah, so the Patriot League announced that they're canceling fall sports, so all sports, not just football, as well. And so, Liam, Kodey, what do y'all think? What are y'all's initial reactions to these cancellations / conference only regulations?
Liam, if you want to go first.
I think it's a good decision. It's gonna suck, obviously, with a lot of things that are happening in the sports world. A lot of things that are happening for the students and the athletes that are looking for scholarships and looking for playtime and exposure. But I think ultimately there's something greater at hand, which is the fact that we have not come to control this this thing that's going on, this COVID-19 thing in our own country, and we need to just stamp down on it.
I'm going to echo Liam's sentiment that, I think that this is for the better. And, the ACC is also talking about moving to conference only. They said that they're pretty close. The SEC said that they're not going to make any decisions until later this July, so later this month, because I think that they're trying to postpone. Okay, so I've been talking to a couple of football coaches, being that I coach in high school, and, a lot of these coaches think that these conferences, by moving to conference only, are trying to buy time, right? So they're hoping that by the time it would be conference only play, that COVID-19 is starting to get contained, because it is nowhere near contained, and it is getting worse literally every single day. And I think that canceling conference play is maybe the smartest thing to do if you want, or canceling non-conference play, pardon me, is the smartest thing to do if you want a chance to play any sports at all. And I mean, there are some, like Simon said, it's bigger than just football too. You have volleyball, you have women's soccer in the fall as well. Like, there's a lot of good competition. And Simon even talked about, it affects other schools too, So there's some matchups that you won't see, like, so for the Pac-12, right? CU won't play Nebraska. There's no chance to play Nebraska because they're in the Pac-12. And so by going to conference only, that's not going to happen.
No, absolutely. And as well, there's a lot that I was realizing when I saw that the Pac-12 was going conference only. But in addition to that, CU won't be playing CSU in the Rocky Mountain Showdown for the first time in, I don't even know when, probably decades, if I'm being honest. Probably decades. Because CSU is not in the Pac-12, even though they are in the same state. And so that would be really interesting to see. I don't know if I actually mentioned it, but I know Northern Colorado, our volleyball team, we were actually supposed to host USC and Washington State's volleyball team, but now that's not going to happen. So for our alma mater and then, Liam's current school, Northern Colorado, they would have to rearrange their schedules around because it's 2 whole games they're not playing at the beginning of the season. And I think, no, I agree. This is a great decision. But what I want to ask y'all is, do y'all think this is the beginning of the end for college sports? As in the end of, okay, here, let me make that a little bit more clear. But when I say the beginning of the end, I mean, do you think that this will eventually lead to the ultimate, second lockdown, as some people would say, or cancellation of fall sports completely? Or, even college sports completely?
This is definitely a beginning of it. I'm not sure if this is like, well, okay, so I should say this is where it begins, right? If it's going to be a true cancellation of fall sports. I'm not sure if this is the actual beginning of the end, but if it is, it starts here, and it will continue. This is not just the start of it. We might see certain programs or certain conferences decide that they want to keep going regardless. But this list is definitely going to keep growing no matter what.
I mean, I think that, okay, all these programs, all these conferences, they're trying to buy time, right? They're trying to see if it's going to get better. But the worst part is that this is as worse as, or as bad as it can get, right? But there's no actions being taken to counteract what's happening right now. And, we're thinking about opening up schools again. And, there's already projections on how many children are going to die when we go back to school. And that's on all levels, right? That's like public education schools, right? Like, we're talking catastrophic, repercussions for trying to open the country too soon, right? Like, and we're seeing it now. And because we couldn't figure it out as soon as it was happening, now it's a future problem, and it's about to be these schools' problem. And these schools are pressured to stay open because, okay, football generates so much money for schools, even especially for small schools. And what Simon was talking about with USC and what'd you say, Washington State for volleyball, Simon? Yeah. So those teams coming to UNC is great for, selling tickets, and maybe even broadcasting, getting more people to watch it, and also getting UNC's name out there, right? Like, there's a whole bunch of opportunities that have just been robbed of our small school because we didn't figure it out earlier this year, right? And you have and I know that some people at CSU are talking about moving to conference only, being the Mountain West. So that means that UNC wouldn't get to play CSU at their new stadium this year, which was also supposed to happen, right? So I feel like a lot of these conferences are going to move to conference only. And, I try to be optimistic, right? I want sports to come back. I want to believe that we can figure this out, right? But there's not a change in national leadership potentially until November, and even then, we're not sure, right? And if this continues to be treated with the same disregard and lack of seriousness that it has been, sports are going to be canceled or people are going to die. So I think that this is going to be a real gut check / morality test for colleges that now have to face the same question, and for sports programs who now have to face the same question that lots of corporations and companies have already answered. And knowing what the answers have been, it makes me a little worried. I'm not going to lie. It makes me really worried about the safety of student athletes, the safety of coaches, and the safety of staff at these schools. Because even conference only, there's still going to be some traveling in there. I mean, CU is going to have to go to California, right? And they're going to have to go to Washington, which, you know, there's a bunch of cases there, and traveling increases the chances of contracting COVID-19. So I'm very, very concerned about the safety, first and foremost, of these programs, as well as the financial stability and how many of these will be able to weather the storm. And the answer is not a lot, because there's only five schools in this entire country that run a profitable athletic department. So a lot, like UNC, if we don't have any sports, there can be some large scale repercussions to what could happen in the fall. That's all I'm going to say about it, is that there's a lot at stake and it's not looking good.
Yeah, especially with big time, big media acquisitions like Ed McCaffrey for the UNC football program. Everybody expects him to bring change to UNC, and if we don't get to play this year, what was all that money for, right? That's the question that a lot of people will be asking, at the very least.
Well, it's like, do you think that we can keep Ed McCaffrey if you don't make any money this year? And the answer is probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Probably not. He would have to restructure his contract. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll just put in my 2 cents before we close up. Or, okay, not before we close up, but before we go on to the next segment. I personally think that this is the beginning of the end. Because, look, I want to be optimistic just as much as anybody. I would love to see sports happen. If not for, D1 FBS college football, I would love to see, Northern Colorado play CSU or play anybody, to be honest. I just don't think that there's enough positive progression to even be in that mindset right now, just with how the leadership of our country is handling everything, where, what the patterns have shown as of now, from the past and whatnot. I'm just not confident. And I could tell you right now, earlier this week, Donald Trump and the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, both threatened, public schools, saying that they would cut funding if they don't go back to school. And I'm not gonna lie, like, just from what I've heard from fellow teachers, seeing what I see on Twitter and TikTok, even social media, whatever, a lot of teachers are willing to call them out on that bluff. Once that happens, we'll see what goes down, because they would love to see them basically essentially fire plenty of teachers that are not core class teachers, which I'm not gonna lie would include me. But at the same time, that's just where the United States is right now. Like, we got pretty much a showdown between the public education system, and then the government. And if that's happening, then I find it hard to believe that sports will happen. I don't know. If the schools aren't open, then I find it hard to believe and see, sports happening this fall or in the spring or anytime moving forward, if I'm being honest, unless it's a professional sports league, because they run by different standards. But if it's college sports, whether it's high school or middle school as well, they're all in the same boat. And it's a sinking one that, as much as I want to be optimistic and look the other way, it doesn't mean the boat's still not sinking. So, all I got to say.
True. Liam, do you have anything else to add on? I believe Simon and I unloaded our 2 cents that weighs more like 25.
Yeah.
No, I think it's pretty straightforward and standard. I think we all basically agree on the same thing.
Yeah. Well, That being said, we are going to move on to our next segment. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the top 5 offensive linemen of all time. As someone who played a lot of offensive line, I'm kind of excited to talk about this one. It's a little weird, but, up next. Welcome back to the Cycle 365. This is episode 41, and we are now going to talk about our top 5 offensive linemen of all time. And, this is kind of a tough list. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's pretty interchangeable, to a degree. I think, in my opinion, this might be one of the most interchangeable all-time lists, but that's just my opinion. And just go throw this out there. I did play offensive line. I've coached a lot of it, and so I feel like I know what I'm talking about to a degree. We're just going to jump into it. So my list, I'll go explain any of them. I'm just going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and y'all could go next, and then we'll react to it per usual. At number 5, I have left guard Larry Allen of famously the Dallas Cowboys. Number 4, I have the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Webster. At number 3, I have all-around lineman. He played a bunch of different positions for the Houston Oilers, I want to say, Bruce Matthews. Number 2, we have the Green Bay Packers legend himself, Forrest Gregg. And at number 1, we have arguably the undisputed number 1 offensive lineman of all time, and Anthony Munoz, the left tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so Kodey, Liam, either one of y'all want to go next?
I'll go next. So I have I do want to mention that my 5 is really, first off, my top 5 are really close to Simon's. It's just the order that's a little bit different. And that my 5 through 6, 7, 8 could be pretty interchangeable. So at number 5, I have Mike Webster, center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 9 Pro Bowls, 4 Super Bowl championships. Pretty good resume. At number 4, this is the only one that I had that Simon didn't. John Hanna, primarily a guard, but played everywhere along the offense. 9 Pro Bowls, 7 All-Pro teams. He was a 4-time Lineman of the Year recipient from the NFLPA. At number 3, I have Bruce Matthews, overall offensive lineman, as Simon said, for the Houston Oilers with 14 Pro Bowls, which is amongst the most in NFL history. At number 2, I have Larry Allen, who played guard as well as tackle, and he made Pro Bowl at 3 different positions, and also was a part of the All-Decades team through the 90s and 2000s. And at number 1, I'm going to echo Simon's sentiment, Anthony Munoz, with 11 Pro Bowls and 9 first-team All-Pros as the undisputed best lineman of all time. Liam, right. Ball's in your court.
It's kind of weird. I have the same 4 through 1 that Simon has, so I'll just go over them. Yeah, exactly the same. So number 1, I got Anthony Munoz. I think it's hard to argue against him. Number 2, I got Forrest Gregg. Number 3, Bruce Matthews. Number 4, Mike Webster, and then number 5, the only different lineman than both of you, I think. I can't remember. Kodey said him. But left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, Joe Thomas.
That's a good one.
Okay. Oh, how do you want to go about this? You want to briefly talk about the number 1 selection that we all had in Munoz?
I mean, I think it's pretty accepted in most football circles and most, NFL circles that Munoz is the best lineman of all time and that he was impenetrable at his best and really athletic for as big as he was.
I would say he definitely modernized the lineman position to a degree. I'm not gonna lie, like when it comes to offensive line, there's not a lot of evolutionaries. I would say the position has been played pretty much the same for a really long time. The only real difference at the position is that people are just getting bigger And as they're getting bigger, they're getting surprisingly more athletic somehow. That's pretty much it. And so, he was just one of those athletic freaks. That's it.
Liam, do you wanna tell us about your take on Munoz?
I just gotta echo Simon, and I think you will as well. He's just stellar. Really kind of almost like too clean of a player, too perfect as far as offensive line goes. I don't think he had really like almost any injuries or any big injuries at all. Just, a player that was blessed, honestly, with with skill and size, speed, basically everything that you can be blessed with for an offensive line. He's durable as well. Just hell of a player.
You guys know that he's a college championship pitcher as well, right?
What? Really?
Yep.
National championship?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
He'll play quarterback.
he about to take Boomer's job.
The only thing I can say about Munoz that might be arguable for somebody else on the list to take the number one spot is he didn't have any Super Bowl wins, even though he did start in 2 Super Bowls.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you play for the Bengals.
Yeah.
For the bungalow.
Those Niners games were close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone still expected the Niners to win for a reason, though.
Oh, for sure.
Those were loaded teams, so.
Sure, yeah. For sure. Munoz is honestly, in my opinion, he's somebody who would be probably the best in the league if he played right now, I would say. I don't think y'all would dispute me on that. I feel like it's a pretty safe take, almost.
He's a little underweight for now because he was about 280, 6'6". So if he could put on 30, 40 pounds and join the weight class, I think for sure.
I think he'd be fine at the tackle position just because he's so athletic, and the edge rushers today are athletic. I feel like Munoz could block a guy like Von Miller, could block a guy like Khalil Mack, because he was also he was strong as an ox. And, I'd say that a lot of the DNs that were rushing DNs, they were arguably, I'll say bigger in like mass, like definitely not as fast as some of the edge rushers that we see today. Like that was definitely like a revolution in and of itself. But I think that Munoz could definitely take them on because they're a bit like he's quick enough, if that makes sense. And he's very fundamentally sound as well.
Yeah. Oh, he was the king of leverage back in the day, His hands were so fast and he would get his leverage right up in there, and I think it would translate pretty well. I do agree that he could probably put on, 20 to 30 pounds, but I feel like, with today's like athletic training and stuff like that, that would be pretty easy compared to, where he was back then in the 80s, early 90s.
Last thing I want to say about Munoz is shout out to him being a pretty solid receiver as far as a lineman goes.
Yeah, he caught
4 touchdowns.
4. Yep. He was also a Man of the Year winner as well, so good dude.
Yeah, it's always needed. So durability's... Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just saying you love to see good off-the-field behavior.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just going to add that durability before we move on is going to be a pretty big, I would say it's a pretty big mark of success as an offensive lineman, because especially in the NFL, because it's tough. Like, you're going against huge dudes every day. Your joints are getting grinded. You're like in the trenches and you don't really take plays off because you're always making contact. So durability is a really big deal here for me. At least when I graded these linemen. Yeah.
I think that that's a good transition as well, because I was also going to say that for me, so you guys both had Forrest Gregg at number 2, and he just missed mine he's at number 6. He's right behind Mike Webster. And I feel like part of it for me was I felt pressured to put a center, like a true center on my list, because they're just so different from tackles and guards as far as what their responsibilities are. And, Mike Webster having won 4 Super Bowls, he had a lot to do with those Super Bowls and playing smart and making everyone around him better. And another thing with Forrest Gregg for me is that, like, he had some other dudes around him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, like, if there is like a discussion of like 2 people, being like amongst the greatest of all time, like one might take away from the other. The only exception that I had for that was probably Bruce Matthews and Mike Munchak. But Bruce Matthews was just so versatile that it kind of overrode Munchak, whereas Gregg was a tackle true and true, if that makes sense. So he is at number 6, and he could easily be number 5 if I didn't feel pressured to have like position representation. It's really hard to judge it with, literally at all 3 different offensive lineman positions, and even depending on where you are on the field, your job is completely different.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I get that. Forrest Gregg was kind of an older guy, and he wasn't as versatile. For me, I couldn't ignore the 7 championship squads he was on. He was on 5 NFL title squads with the Packers, and as well as 2 Super Bowls with the Packers, playing right tackle. He was, Lombardi said it himself. He was very useful. He was a great player, because they would run the power sweep, a lot, where the right tackle, would usually lead on that, right? And so, also, he played like 188 straight games between 1956 and 1971. And in an era where, like, there's a lot more running plays than passing plays. Like, as an offensive lineman, like, I think for everyone it's a little bit different, but personally for me, like, running plays are most definitely way more taxing than passing plays, because running plays, like, you got to get into your guy, and even after you lay him out, you got to get into the next level quickly. Passing game, pass blocking wise, you're kind of still at the same spot, and yeah, you might block one guy and then a blitzer or 2, but it's not that same urgency where you gotta, like, all right, I'm gonna dump this dude and then I'm gonna get on to the next linebacker, and then after that to the safety and stuff like that. So that's why I respect, run block guys so much, or guys who are so good at it consistently, because it's hard to do, especially playing 188 straight games, an era where you're basically running the ball most, like, 90% of the time. To me, that says a lot about his durability, his work ethic as a champion, being on 7 of those squads. And I feel like I really had no choice to put him at number 2, just because he was if there was any, he was a revolutionary, he was durable, and he has more rings than, honestly, some of the guys that we have on other top 5 lists have altogether. So,
he has more rings than my entire top 5 list, because I think, including NFL titles, that is.
Yeah.
Mike Webster, 4 Super Bowls. Larry Allen, 1 Super Bowl. I think that's it.
Right.
Yeah. Liam, did you have anything to add on to that?
Not really for Mike Webster. I think you guys said it all, basically. I would say for Forrest Gregg, as a plus to him, he coached Anthony Munoz. So not only is he not only is he one of the greatest of all time, he knew how to make the greatest of all time. He knew how to start him off. He coached him for the first 3 years of his career. So, or first 4 years, actually, 80 to 83.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. So that in my mind, I know it's coaching and not actually actively playing, right? But that's still a big boost in my mind for why he's high up.
Well,
sure.
And I mean, Lombardi said that Gregg was the best player that he coached ever. I don't know if you guys caught that quote in your research, but
yeah,
that definitely goes a long way. And man, this list was tough. There's like I like my 1 through 4, but also I feel like Forrest Gregg could also be number 2. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, for sure. I mean, honestly, linemen are, I think we all know this, they're really important. For a lot of teams, they could be the heart and soul of that team, or even obviously whether, that team is successful or not. And so I think it is kind of hard to grade some of these guys because it's it's a kind of a simplistic position, but it's so important. And you really don't know like how smart an offensive lineman is unless you talk to him, how smart offensive linemen are compared to each other unless you talk to all of them and pick their brains, but the fact that he did coach Anthony Munoz should say that he was obviously a smart offensive lineman, one of the smarter ones to ever play the game. And so I just thought he deserves his due right here. Also, he's a Texas guy, so there you go.
Wow,
Colorado,
classic.
so we know where his true loyalty lay.
Oh
wow, he only died last year.
Scragg?
Yeah, Forrest Gregg died last year in Colorado Springs, April 12th, 2019.
In Colorado Springs?
Yeah, Colorado Springs.
Where were you, Simon?
I was in Greeley, probably. Oh my god. Not that it matters. That would have been weird if I just went to his funeral, but
Oh my god.
anyways, I did not know that. Wow, that's kind of crazy. That's a really long time for an offensive lineman, especially some of the other people on this list, but we'll move on.
With the era too.
Right.
I think a great transition is to talk about the guy who is number 3 on all of our lists, and that's Bruce Matthews, overall utility lineman for the Houston Oilers predominantly. And if we want to talk about durability, 296 games. It's still amongst the highest of all time played by an NFL player.
Yeah. Hey, bro, he played for 18 years in the NFL. That's almost that is 3 different decades he's played in, technically.
Yeah, and he made the Pro Bowl in 14 of them. So like he wasn't just there, like that is an NFL. I'm pretty sure it's still an NFL record for most Pro Bowls by, not like a kicker or puncher, but by a position player with 14. And it's the most amongst all linemen as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he played at least 17 games at all 5 positions. First off, that's really hard to do. Switching from position to position, like I said, we said, I guess, it's a pretty simplistic position, block the guy in front of you, pretty much. But from position to position, there are different, objectives you have, and to play at least 17 games at each position and, be a Pro Bowler 14 out of 18 seasons, that's really good. And I'm not even going to cap, bro. Like, I really did. He has a pretty significant, argument for being one of the best offensive linemen of all time.
For sure. He played 99 games as a left guard, 87 games as a center, 67 as a right guard, 22 as a right tackle, and then 17 as a left tackle. And not only that, but he was the snapper on field goals, PATs, and punts. So he basically played 6 positions.
Wow.
And he never missed a game due to injury.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's pretty inspirational. I'm not even going to cap. I mean, we all know about, the Matthews family and the football tree they have. It's one of the best, in NFL history. But Bruce Matthews was, he was the OG back in the day, one of the OG. So all the respect to him. He was great. And honestly, he low-key can be higher than 3. It is what it is.
He was one of the OGs being offensive guard, but I want to say that, if you want to talk about the systems that he played in too, the Bum Phillips teams is what I'm talking about in Houston. They were run teams, like they handed the ball off every single down. 3rd and 8, don't care. We're going to hand the ball off. And I think when you have a guy like Bruce Matthews, that plays a huge role in it. And the legacy, we've said, we've talked about Super Bowls and how much that plays into a lineman's legacy. But I think that this is a bit different, linemen, so I feel like when I was doing my research for this, I knew a lot of these names already because growing up, my dad stressed the importance, Kodey, linemen are the most important people on the field. They're the unsung heroes, But without a good line, you really can't go that far. Everyone else has to be elite, basically, if you're going to make it without a line. And even then, that's a lot to ask for. So having like just these guys who stay on the grind and they make guys like Warren Moon and Earl Campbell famous in Bruce Matthews' position. We'll talk about Larry Allen here in a bit, but Larry Allen paving the way for Emmitt Smith for a few years. Like, they don't get the glory, but you need to know their names and you need to recognize them and give them their due. And Bruce Matthews he was a dog. And, you could make an argument from versatility standpoint alone that he may be the best offensive lineman of all time. And I feel like Super Bowls aren't as important until you get to maybe like the center position is what I would argue, just because as far as like being a leader of an offensive line and making everyone better around you. But Bruce Matthews didn't make everyone better. He just played every position.
Yeah, that's still pretty good.
Do it myself.
And you'll take that. Oh my gosh, I love coaching offensive linemen. It's so great. I think everyone knows how important linemen are. At least football players do. There's always that one diva or two, but I think everyone knows how important offensive linemen, how important the position is, and especially how important durability is. And Bruce Matthews, he had it all, I would say. Anyways, moving forward, real quick, Liam, did you have Mike Webster on your list at all?
Yeah, I have Mike Webster at number 4.
Oh, okay. Oh, same as me. Wait, Kodey, Did you?
I had number 5.
Okay. I know we talked about him a little bit, but I mean, I feel like he's undisputedly the best center of all time.
I'm going to hit the pause button on that because I won't say undisputed, and that's because Jim Otto exists. I went back and forth pretty hard between Jim Otto and Mike Webster because if you include like AFL standings and championships, Jim Otto was around for a long time and he put in some serious work and also had more Pro Bowls and more All-Pro appearances. I did give Webster the edge due to just the dominance, and Otto got to play with some other dudes. He got to play with Gene Upshaw a little bit, so that versus Mike Webster, where I can't name a single other lineman from those Steelers teams on the offensive side of the ball. So that's kind of what edged it out, but I wouldn't say it's like end all be all. You can make arguments for either one, as well as sorry, I'm kind of ranting a little bit here, but Mel Hine. This may be an unfamiliar name because it was back in the 30s, and this is way old. It's still NFL. He was a center, and he won MVP. So, granted, he played both sides of the ball, but still. Only offensive lineman to have ever won an MVP. Just saying.
All right, sure, yeah. Give it to him. Yeah, Jim Otto definitely has a argument, but there is Gene Upshaw, and Upshaw barely missed this list, to be honest. So that's why I'm giving Mike Webster, Iron Mike, the best spot for a center. He's actually the only center on this list, actually, true center. So there you go. But rest in peace. He was a 4-time champ for the Steelers, but he also got to mentor I don't want to say the other great Steelers center, but now that I think about it, probably the next best Steelers center of all time, Dermontti Dawson, who eventually became a Hall of Famer after him as well. So there's that as well. Played in 220 games, which is Steelers record, 15 seasons, which feel like Big Ben might be close to breaking it if he already hasn't. I don't know. I think Big Ben has broken that by now. At the time, it was a franchise record, and if that doesn't say durability, I don't know what does. And playing center is probably one of the harder defensive line positions, I would say, as well, because there's just so much you got to do between the snap and calling out blitzes and pass block, run block, situations. So I give him a lot of credit here. He's still at only number 4 for me, though.
So, Liam, do you have anything else to add on about Webster?
Mike Webster?
Yeah.
Not really.
All right. Well, I think that's kind of a transition towards the last agreement on our lists. And that was Simon and I, not necessarily in order, but both having Larry Allen. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Larry Allen. I'm not even kidding. I almost put him at number 1 just because, I mean, gosh, he's probably the scariest offensive lineman to ever play the game. I don't know if you guys ever saw his combine, but he squatted and deadlifted 900 pounds. And I think he benched 450. And then during the Pro Bowl in like 2003, he repped 225 pounds 43 times. Like, Larry Allen was a tank, and he was fast too. Like, he would knock down three guys on defense and then outrun the running back to the end zone. Like, as far as just like raw athletic talent, and then also, you know, being a student of the game, having made the Pro Bowl at 3 different positions, you know, I think that Larry Allen is one of the best. He also has a Super Bowl to his name. So that's why that kind of vaulted him up a little bit, up to number 2. And, you know, I think that you don't have as big of a reputation for the boys back in the 90s if Larry Allen isn't there paving holes for Emmitt Smith and giving Troy Aikman 5 years to just throw up a jump ball to Michael Irvin. I still put no respect on Troy Aikman's name.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I have him at number 5. Don't get it twisted. I most definitely thought about putting him at even number 1 or 2, 3, 4. You know, honestly, like, I really did consider him for those positions, but I had to push him to number 5 just because of where everyone else's accomplishments are, championship-wise and durability-wise. And it's unfair to a degree, but he is one of the best of all time, one of the best guards to ever play the game. And yeah, no, he was super athletic. I'm not even go cap. Like, I wish I could put him higher, but I really just felt like I couldn't. Okay, so this is where, you know, lists start connecting for me. If y'all remember my top 5 running backs of all time, I most definitely said Emmitt Smith is not the best running back of all time because of Larry Allen. And that's why he took that hit. And so I feel like I couldn't have said that without putting Larry Allen on this list. And that's why he's on here. And I just think, honestly, if it comes down to it, he's just a better lineman than John Hanna, who was the next guy up, in my opinion. So that's why he's here. He was an athletic freak, and that's it. Oh, and, you know, he helped out the Cowboys' legacy and all that as well. So there you go.
That makes for a good transition, because I was the only one who put John Hanna on my list, I believe. John Hanna was on my list, whereas Forrest Gregg was on your guys' lists. And we'll get to Liam not having Larry Allen on in a second, because there's a good talk about Joe Thomas. But John Hanna, he was an all-decade guy for the 1970s and the 1980s, and I think that that's always impressive too, where, you know, Larry Allen, also 90s and 2000s all-decade kind of guy. John Hanna, he won the most NFLPA awards for Lineman of the Year, and this was during a time where Matthews, Munoz, and Webster were all around. I want to point out he won it 4 times. He also had 7 All-Pro teams, which is the exact same as Bruce Matthews, and 9 Pro Bowls. So he has the recognition to back it up. And I remember like reading about him as a kid, and I remember my grandpa talking about him all the time. I was like, what the heck? My grandpa knew who his offensive linemen were back in the 70s. Like, that's insane, you know? Like, especially and Hanna was another guy who was very versatile. You know, he's primarily a guard, but he also played center when called upon, and he also played tackle when called upon. And I feel like versatility played a huge role in deciding my overall list. Hence the reason why I have Allen, Matthews, and then Hanna, being that, you know, they have one position that they might be recognized most for, being guard, but they were also just like utility knives on the offensive line. So that's why Hanna makes my list at number 4. Is, you know, the versatility just continues to blow me away. And the Lineman of the Year awards that are judged upon by your peers, by the way. So
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, like I said, he's someone who probably deserves to be on a top 5 offensive lineman list. He's just not on mine, and he was right outside. And when you get to great players, we've talked about this a billion times. When you get to great players, you start splitting hairs, and the hair I had to split for Hannah was that Super Bowl loss to that dominant Bears team. And look, I know it's not his fault that he he didn't have a better team than that Bears squad, but Larry Allen has a Super Bowl ring, so there you go. And I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. He's still a great player, but that Super Bowl stuck out to me, and I hate that I have to judge him on that one game, but that's what happens when you split hairs.
Simon's really gonna put disrespect on John Hannah's name for not being able to block 8 dudes at the same time, bro. What the heck?
Yes.
Like, bro, they were bringing 8 every time. John Hannah, I said he could play all 5, but not at the same time, bro. Like, he's behind Larry Allen for me, but bruh.
I mean, if you bring up
that,
not disrespecting him, bro, he played against a great defense and he lost. Look, there could be worse losses, trust me. I mean, because this was a quality loss. I know people hate to say it, but there are certain losses in history that aren't quality losses. LeBron losing to the Mavs in the finals. That's not a quality loss, to be honest. Well, in my opinion, it is, but for most people, it's not. And so, it was a quality loss against a historical great defense. Congrats, you lost, but again, you lost and you don't have a ring. So it's just one of those things, Splitting hairs. That's it. It's splitting hairs.
it's one of those things.
Well,
But that's my 2 cents on John Hannah. Liam, do you want to talk about your special addition to your list?
Yeah, let's talk about him. Joe Thomas. I would say he's the second best left tackle of all time. You guys have any disagreements about that?
Yes.
You would. Okay, well, never mind. Let's talk about Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas played 167 games. At one point before his last season, before he got injured, he played 10,000 consecutive snaps. In fact, he ended with 10,363, which he was the first player in the NFL to ever reach that milestone. And that, talking about durability, that is massive. And some of these guys, some of these players played 15 years, some of them played 18 years, like we were seeing. Joe Thomas played 10 years. And in 10 years, he reached 10,000 snaps. And some of these guys played 18 years and didn't reach 10,000 snaps. So the amount of on-field capability that he had and the Iron Man level that he brought to the game was massive, in my opinion. First and only offensive lineman in NFL history to be voted to 10 consecutive Pro Bowls. And the most important thing for me is that he did it with a career record of 48 wins, 128 losses, and no playoff appearances. You could argue that he was the only bright spot for the Cleveland Browns between 2007 and 2017.
Oh, he was. And, I'd say that he probably might have the highest tackle total out of any of these guys because of how many interceptions his quarterbacks threw.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to look into that. But I think Joe Thomas is a great player. I think as far as you want to say like a perfect career goes, Joe Thomas is probably the closest that you can get to a career being perfect from like an efficiency standpoint. Like you said,
right.
10 for 10 on Pro Bowls, 10,000 snaps in 10 years. I think that for me, you could see it on my list as well as Simon's list. There's just not a heavy modern presence. And I do have, so if you can visualize, I have like the top 5 players, right? I have my 1 through 5 in dark green. Then I have the just missed, which is my Forrest Gregg, Jim Otto, and Mel Hine in light green. And then I have this blue list over here on the right that's like a long list of honorable mentions that I wanted to just bang out real quick, where you have like Will Shields, just from the modern era, Orlando Pace, Willie Rofe, as well as Jonathan Ogden, Joe Thomas. Like, there's a lot of dudes from, especially that late 90s / 2000s decade, and for Joe Thomas into the 2010s, that were the best linemen of our era growing up. You know what I'm saying? I think that it's just really hard to put those in the same breath as these guys that played multiple positions. You know what I'm saying? And then obviously I said that like Super Bowls are a little different, but having no playoff appearances kind of hurts, because you could say that some of these guys, even on like a shorter career, might have played more games too. Right. Or like durability is also a factor of it. Simon brought it up, and Joe Thomas was perfectly durable for 10 years. It's just a shame that it was only 10 years, if that makes sense. Where some of these guys have 12 Pro Bowls, 14 Pro Bowls, 11 Pro Bowls, that have more Pro Bowls than Joe Thomas spent years in the league, which is nothing to hold against him. And I still think he's one of the best of all time. I just kind of have, I guess, like a bias against like modern era, not for any particular reason, more that the 70s and 80s, I just feel like we're a bit more hard-nosed, and the versatility impressed me more.
Yeah, agreed with everything you said. I have those same guys, by the way, on my best miss list and honorable mentions list as well. Look, I agree that Joe Thomas is probably one of the best tackles of all time. Might be the second best of all time. There's an argument there, but the wins, it doesn't really help him out. And I mean, he only really played 10 years as well, which I get it. It's a personal decision. It's where the NFL is going, just shorter NFL careers. If you don't play quarterback, that is. But, and those are things that he honestly really couldn't control, Right. But, I give him his respect. He was a really good player. And I remember him going up against the likes of, James Harrison, Terrell Suggs, all of those guys, and both who are going to the Hall of Fame, and he's had his share of tough AFC North defenses to basically go to battle against all by himself, because it's not like the rest of the Browns did, and it shows with their record. So It is what it is. Honestly, if Joe Thomas played until maybe 2019, just a little bit longer, I would say, I think I would consider him more for a top 5 spot. But just with everyone else, it's really hard to do that,
Yeah, for sure.
And if I may, I think that this may be something where like maybe I just feel too close to it, so that's why I didn't want to put him in the top 5 of all time like immediately. So Joe Thomas could definitely be a guy where in 10 years I'm like, no, he was a top 5 all time. But I think that I'm a little worried about just like, I watched Joe Thomas this entire time, right? Mm-hmm. And so like, hopefully when I look back, I won't remember how terrible the Browns were. I'll remember how good Joe Thomas was.
Yeah, that'll be hard to do, but we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, kind of has that Archie Manning career type right now with, so.
Oh, for sure. Where he's like, he's the only thing that they had going for them for the entire duration that he was there. Obviously, the likes of Josh Gordon and I can never remember the fullback's name, even though he was on the Broncos.
Peyton Hillis.
Yeah, Peyton Hillis. They obviously still had bright spots, right? But he was the only person who stayed with it. And, hats off to him for staying with the Browns for 10 years. With 48 wins, with 128 losses, and no playoff appearances. And being, arguably at some point, the best offensive lineman in the league at his time. He could have gone anywhere. He literally could have gotten up, said, I'm done with the Browns, and gone and played for the Patriots and given them Super Bowls. You know what I mean?
The Broncos almost got him.
Yeah, the Broncos almost got him.
Oh.
And they didn't. And, props to him for sticking with the Browns. Props to him for doing for Cleveland what LeBron almost didn't.
I mean, yeah, that's true. That's fair. Look, loyalty counts for something, and so does durability. And so, I mean, that's why I would say Joe Thomas might be our most honorable mention of all the people on our list, to be honest. He's a good guy, too. That counts for something.
He's so nice
Yeah.
if you've watched any of his interviews.
Oh, yeah. He's a great guy. Absolutely.
I want to call out one of my honorable mentions, Jim Ringo.
Okay. Hold up. How do I not? Who did he play for?
He played for the Packers. 53.
Okay.
He was a part of that that line. Hey,
Yeah, he was the Packers center.
Jim Ringo, good.
Yeah, Jim Ringo is one of those weird guys where like he was 211 pounds when he was drafted in the 7th round and only really reached like 230 pounds. But you know, his speed is what made up for it as a center, being able to, you know, he essentially made the Packers sweep, that kind of like that famous play that essentially helped the Packers win 2 Super Bowls at the start of the NFL, or as the start of the NFL as we know it, really. He made that happen, and I mean, you could maybe argue that Jim Taylor, the greatest fullback of all time, might not have had quite the career that he had without Jim Ringo.
I mean, for sure. I know we want to kind of keep these a little bit shorter, so I'll just throw out 2 more. So I think have we mentioned Alan Faneca?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, he's on there. He's a modern day guy. I feel like that should be pretty obvious. You know, maybe not top 5, but he's an honorable mention. And then last one for me he's an older guy, but it'd probably have to be Ron Mix. He's considered one of the best offensive linemen to ever play in the AFL from 1960 to 1971. The thing that stood out with him was that he was super disciplined, and he committed only 2 holding penalties in a 10-year career for the Chargers and Raiders.
That's pretty insane.
Yeah, that's pretty hard to do. No cap.
Crazy, actually.
The Raiders have a bunch of honorable mentions on my list. Like, I'll put some respect on their name. I have Art Shell on here, Gene Upshaw, and I talked about Jim Otto a little bit. And really, the worst part is that they kind of took away from each other more than anything. So the fact that they all played together is the reason why none of them were in the top 5. But they were all great in their own respects and for their own way. And they did play at times without each other. I also want to put out Ronald McDaniel, or Ronnie McDaniel. He played for the Vikings for a really long time and made 12 Pro Bowls. And yeah, those are my honorable mentions. Big shout out to Jonathan Ogden. He was the one where he's the one I thought of when you were like, yeah, Joe Thomas, second best tackle all time, no cap. I was like, Jonathan Ogden was a dog. So
yeah,
and he helped Jamal Lewis run for 2K, which I think is important to point out. So, yep, that's what I got for linemen.
Segment.
Liam, was there any particular reason why you left Larry Allen out?
No, I nothing against Larry Allen either. It's just I just felt like Joe Thomas deserved it more. I mean, Larry Allen is a freak of a guy. If it probably wasn't Joe Thomas, it'd just probably be Larry Allen. You know, just to be completely fair, Larry Allen, number 6 on my list.
I definitely think his highlights are the most fun to watch.
Oh, for sure.
Out of any lineman, he's
nuts.
He's nuts. That's a good way to put it. Larry Allen, most unhinged lineman.
Yeah,
but in the most respectful way.
I mean, no, for sure. If you were to watch lineman, this is the shout out to all the little all the little big boys out there. If you were to watch a lineman film, Larry Allen film, and then Anthony Munoz film is probably the way to go. And then Mike Webster too, if you're gold place. That's saying.
I mean, Quentin Nelson might have he might take us for a ride with that one.
Or Zach Martin.
Yeah, constantly screaming at people as he charges at them.
I'm excited to see Quentin Nelson's career.
Yeah.
too. There's some good linemen out there right now that could make up this next generation.
For sure.
I'm excited.
Anyways, I think that is it for this segment. So coming up next, we have another segment of Good Take, Bad Take. I think we're going to talk about one of our episodes called The Denver Dilemma and go into that coming up next.
Welcome back to the last segment of the Cycle 365. We got an edition of Good Take, Bad Take. This one is a little bit of a good take, seeing as how we predicted that Drew Lock would come into the lineup with where our season was going to be at when he came back healthy. And it's a little bit of a bad take because we thought Drew Lock was going to be way worse than he was. Here's the take.
And then you got Drew Lock on the bench. And
He's actually on IR.
Yeah, he's injured right now.
wow, okay, so he's not even on the bench. So even if y'all wanted to play him, you can't.
Yeah, because
Wow.
our only other quarterback on the roster is Brandon Allen, who's not going to do anything.
Don't put in Brandon Allen.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. No, we don't want him. We do not want him in.
Yeah.
We don't want him in. I'm just saying, like, we have no other option besides Joe Flacco.
Broncos games are already hard to watch.
Wait,
Yeah.
so when does Drew Lock come back?
He could come back week 8, correct?
But he's slated for week 9, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
That is if they use it on one of two to bring back off the IR. I think they will, especially with how the season's going. And at that point, depending upon a record, most likely bring him in. I'm ready to see him already. I'm not high on Drew Lock, but at this point, I want to see him.
Yeah, I think y'all need to figure out what's up with him because this next quarterback class, like,
It's a make it or break it
oh yeah,
for the Broncos franchise.
You got, in my opinion, you have at least, around 4 or 5 quarterbacks that are better than Drew Lock right now.
You're right, and Joe Flacco right now.
Yeah, exactly. So like, y'all either stick with Flacco, who's he's gonna win y'all games when y'all aren't gonna compete anyways, or you could go with Drew Lock, who, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure everyone in this room's opinion, was already a little bit iffy. We weren't really big believers in him in the preseason. Didn't really help with that either.
Not at all.
So he looks trash, to be honest. So he might be on the trade block already, or if not, then y'all might have to buy into him, see what you have. But by that point, by the time you actually figure out and know for sure, Tua, Jake Fromm, all those guys, they'll be gone, long gone. And
Yeah.
so that's the dilemma right now because quarterback wise, there's no upside.
You're right. I think this is a make it or break it draft for the franchise quarterback for the future of the Broncos franchise at quarterback position. This draft is the one where they're gonna get the quarterback.
Y'all will have to make some hard decisions on pretty much this season, in my opinion, either this season or in the off season.
You're right.
So as you can hear on the take, unfortunately we don't have Jesse with us, who provided a lot of the take, but he said depending on where the season's at, when Drew Lock is healthy, we need to put him in. And Simon echoed his sentiment, saying that we need to figure out what we got. Jesse said he wasn't too high on him, which that's still a bit of a question mark. We've definitely wagered a lot on what we saw in those few games, but I'd say that it inspired optimism that wasn't previously there. Liam, being the fellow Bronco fan in the chat, what are your thoughts on this take and kind of reflecting back on last season? I know it's really hard to think about what life was like before Drew Lock because it hurts to think about, but kind of what were your thoughts heading into Drew Lock starting and, I guess like the outlook of the season after we started off 0-4?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I think my outlook on it was you could sum it up as, well, this couldn't get any worse.
Yeah.
So putting Drew Lock in, I was kind of high on Flacco. Let's be honest. I know we had that conversation a couple times in private, but I was pretty excited for Drew Lock coming in. Just to see what he could do. You know what I mean? I didn't really have much of an estimation of his skills or his abilities, but I was willing to give him a chance. I know that, so much of Broncos history has been driving out pretty decent quarterbacks in search for the next John Elway, in search for the next chosen one. So I was a little bit worried about that happening with Drew Lock. I was worried that we were starting him before he was ready, but he proved us all wrong, I think, and he was ready. He was ready to go 4-1 at the very least. That's not indicative of an entire season, obviously, and so that's what this next season is going to be the most important part of. But he was ready for those four games that we played, that we won. I wouldn't say that he was ready to go up against the Chiefs in the snow, even at home, but that is what it is. So, in my mind, good take.
Yeah, so we originally had him slated going in, I believe week 9 was his return, but they kept pushing it back. So they made sure he was healthy, which I think was super important to A, his performance during the games, and B, his confidence. You don't want to put a guy, especially a rookie quarterback, who, during the draft process was projected by some to go in the first round. And, from us here at the cycle, projected to go even a little bit later, 3rd or 4th round guy, I think is what we were saying, because we knew that he needed to be developed. And we talked about it during the preseason. We weren't overly impressed, especially with his footwork, but we found a way to use him, and we even beat a playoff team during this run with Drew Lock.
Yeah, that team being the Texans, of course.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Simon, you have an opinion?
I mean, what are some of your, from an outside perspective, I guess, what do you think about this take?
Oh, it's a good take. I mean, y'all didn't have a choice, and I think it was the only choice that y'all really had to make. Y'all weren't going to the playoffs, and even if you did, you weren't going to contend. Let's be honest. So you had to figure out what you had in Drew Lock, because y'all know that you had a really good draft class coming up. Like, I think if Drew Lock didn't work out, there might have been a scenario where Jalen Hurts might have been drafted in the 2nd round instead to the Broncos. I could have seen that for sure. But obviously that didn't happen because y'all have Drew Lock. And, I'll give him his credit. He played relatively well his first 5 games. Is that an accurate depiction of what's going to happen for the rest of his career? I don't think so. Y'all did build around him, so y'all really don't have a choice anymore, and you got to ride this guy out for at least 2 or 3 more years, whether you like it or not. Hoping to, because if he doesn't do well, then the narrative will be, well, we just got to help him find that magic that he had his rookie season, and that might be something y'all might hold on to even if he doesn't consistently do well. And I think that's fair to say, but he did look pretty solid. Look, I think there's optimism there. For those, okay, I'm just going to throw this out there. One of my favorite sports podcasts ever to listen to outside of the Cycle 365 would have to be Strong Opinion Sports, led by Zach Schaumler. I love him because he breaks down film really well. He's a quarterback. He was a college quarterback, so he knows what he's talking about, and he goes in depth. He makes it understandable, and he does breakdown videos, and I'm pretty sure he did a breakdown video. You can look it up on YouTube, Spotify, all of those major streaming sports at Strong Opinion Sports. He did a breakdown of Drew Lock. He said, yes, there's plenty he did well. He made some pretty, he would say easy decisions and whatnot that you would expect any, solid quarterback to make. This next year, he needs to work a little bit harder. We got to see, what teams could actually roll out against him, because teams weren't really playing, I don't want to say serious defense, but they weren't, because, you never want to show off all your cards to a team that you could beat without doing that, And so now that teams actually have film on Drew Lock, and not just college film, but NFL film, solidified NFL film on Drew Lock, now they're gonna start dissecting Drew Lock and his tendencies, and really nitpick and see, all right, well, is he the real deal? If he faces a safety blitz, or say against the Steelers, if he faces some actual elite pass rushers and a great safety with Minkah Fitzpatrick over the edge, can he still make the right play under pressure? And sometimes it comes down to not can he do it mentally, but will he do it physically? And that might be the thing to look out for, just his mechanics, his accuracy, all that stuff. There are definitely, and I think y'all saw it, but there are definitely throws where it was like, made the right read, but man, was that throw terrible. And like, I don't know. Or sometimes, you know, maybe the throw was okay, but man, was that read not, it was very Mark Sanchez-esque, if we're being honest. So that's what happens when you have a rookie quarterback, a young quarterback. And he is a young guy. He's pretty young comparatively to other NFL quarterbacks. So, you know, we'll give him that pass for now, but I would say that is a good take.
I definitely am going to echo. There were some times where I was just like, oh, don't throw it there. And then he'd throw it there. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that didn't get intercepted. But, you know, fortunately, you say Mark Sanchez-esque read, but Drew Lock has a way strong arm. You know, I mean, we saw it at least in the preseason and even during like combine and college, where, you know, his footwork, first off, his footwork improved dramatically between the preseason and week 12. Or week 13. I want to put that out there. Just like you could see it in his dropbacks, looked smoother. You could see it even when he was handing the ball off. It looked a lot more comfortable. Like he felt more in his element, and he wasn't afraid to use his legs to rush for a couple of yards here and there. But I do want to say that I think the most important part of Drew Lock coming into the lineup was hope and confidence, right? I mean, Joe Flacco's never been known for being an inspiring dude. We all know that. Like, I mean, I've probably seen him smile like twice in his whole career. And one of those is when he was holding the Lombardi trophy, and it's like, yeah, bro, you should probably smile when you do that. Like, he's pretty bland. Like, Joe Flacco's pretty bland, you know, and no disrespect to him or Brandon Allen. Brandon Allen was a stopgap guy just until Drew Lock was healthy or until Joe Flacco was healthy. We all knew that, you know, Brandon Allen wasn't the future of the Denver Broncos franchise. But, you know, I think that one thing that worked really well for Drew Lock was, we're like, all right, go in and show us what you got. And he knew that we didn't have anything to lose. You know, he's like, oh, like, all right, I'm just going to go have fun. And I think that if he continues that mentality of like having fun and, you know, because there is pressure on him, right? Our draft class says that more than anything else.
For sure.
And, you know, is he going to let the pressure get to him? Or is he going to go out there and is he going to have fun? Because I think if he plays relaxed, then the Broncos can succeed and thrive with Drew Lock under center.
I mean, I agree, and I'm an outside perspective. I think, you know, if I really like his attitude, you know, approaching everything. He kind of just has one of those attitudes that makes him, you know, a real likable guy, a real, like, a good character, I would say. I think there are I wouldn't say there are a lot of guys around the league that are like that, but, you know, there's definitely a couple. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is one of those guys that you just like. I think Drew Lock is kind of like that. He's just one of those guys that you just like. And, you know, you want him to succeed. You want him to play with confidence, to play with his swagger, you know, doing it right. Because that's what it comes down to. This is a game, but it's a very extremely competitive game where you got to do something right, or someone will take your job, because there are plenty of talented quarterbacks to do so. And, you know, I think he could do it. Honestly, I'll say that right now. I think he can do it, with not just because of the weapons around him, but just who he is as a player, how hard he's worked, and how much he has improved. You know, not gonna go as far as saying that he has a Patrick Mahomes type of you know, trajectory. I know we kind of mentioned that briefly last week, but I would say that he's somebody who could have a Patrick Mahomes sort of kind of like progression in a way, you know, because Mahomes was not a complete guy coming out of college. You know, many other analysts have said the same thing. Honestly, a lot of people did low-key compare Drew Lock as a, you know, as a prospect to Patrick Mahomes as a prospect. The only difference was that, you know, more people bought into Patrick Mahomes as a prospect than Drew Lock. And it was pretty obvious, because Drew Lock would make way more terrible decisions Patrick Mahomes ever did at Texas Tech. You know, it's a difference of systems and conferences. Anyways, though, I think he can make, you know, significant progressions this season if it happens. And throughout his career, he just seems like a hardworking guy. As long as he doesn't get complacent, that's really the only thing. He'll be okay. He'll be pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
He needs to protect the ball more than anything. Because the
Yeah.
interceptions that he threw were bad. There's some terrible interceptions. I'm not even gonna lie. And he this wasn't talked about enough, I don't think, but he had 2 fumbles in that final game against the Raiders, and I was actually fortunate enough to go see that game. And there were some plays where it's like, okay, like his energy was a huge part of it. I don't know if you guys ever saw him rapping that Young Jeezy song when we were in like the third quarter, but even when the Raiders were mounting a comeback a little bit, Drew Lock was like, "Hey guys, let's just go play some football," and that's his strength, but also he needs to know when to really turn it on and focus, because those 2 fumbles could have cost us that last game. But luckily, Drew Lock was the quarterback who ended the Oakland Raiders, their franchise history, with a loss. So take that L on the way out, Oakland.
Oh,
I always have to bring it up that the last thing that the Oakland Raiders did was lose to the Broncos in Mile High.
I'm down.
That's fair.
That'll never get old.
Sure. I mean, I don't care because I'm not a Broncos fan, but yeah, sure. Or a Raider.
Drew Lock was the guy. Okay, he was there. Granted, a lot of it was Philip Lindsay, but we have a cast around him, and hopefully
y'all have much better coaching in my opinion too. I think the fact that he could do as much as he did with y'all's OC, which we were really critical of in that take, by the way, and he did get fired for a much better one in Pat Shurmur. I think he would be excellent in Pat Shurmur's system. I think he'll put up some really nice numbers. But, at the end of the day, we gotta, criticize quarterbacks based on their play consistently, especially in crunch time. Because numbers are great all around, but it's the plays that happen in crunch time that will ultimately matter. So that's why he has to get his footwork completely right. He has to get his consistency right. He has to get his, maybe not as much of this, but reading defenses a little bit better. And I think he'll be real successful. Even without that, I think in some ways he'll be successful. Just being who he is, having a great arm, and just being that athletic dude.
Bet.
All I have to say about that.
Liam?
Yeah, I mean, you guys put it pretty well. We built around him. We've built a system around him. We've hired coaches what seems like based around him, so the impetus is on him now, and I think he has everything he needs to succeed, but he also has everything he needs to spectacularly fail. So it's we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm rooting for him to succeed just because I'm a Broncos fan. I like him.
Yeah. I don't want to be bad anymore.
Yeah, big knock on wood in that one. And then I don't know. It's I hear it so much that I'm kind of getting sick of hearing it. But everybody in the Broncos locker room always talks about. And can you call it out, Kodey? I'll give you one word, one guess. What do they say when they talk about Drew Lock?
What are you talking about? Attitude?
Swag, bro.
He does have swag. He's got
swagger, and that's what all of his teammates say, and they all seem to be behind him. So that's the most encouraging thing. Like, yes, everybody was behind Flacco. Yes, everybody was behind Case Keenum. Yes, everybody was behind Trevor Siemian. But this guy seems to be. There seems to be something different, at the very least, from those other 3 guys. You know what I mean?
I mean, he arguably has the most personality since Manning.
Yeah.
But in like a different way, but still in like, Peyton knew how to have fun too. So
Right. I mean, if we're talking like straight fiery personality, he might be the closest to Tim Tebow we've gotten since Tim Tebow.
And we won games with Tebow, so I'll take it.
And we won games with Tebow, so
good. Yeah, I agree. He has that swag. I can't even deny it. you know, you gotta put in that work, or you just look like a clown. So
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel had some swag, and
Hey, don't be jinxing us like that, bro.
no, I didn't say it. I just said he had swag. You know, look all this.
True. Well,
Johnny Manziel had swag. He also had issues.
No, for sure. But if that's everything that needs to be said, Kodey, did you have anything to add?
nope. I was gonna start on the outro if you weren't.
I got you. Well, with all that being said, we'll just have to see. And you know, we definitely made plenty of takes right here in this good take, bad take right here about Drew Lock. So we'll see what happens. Make sure you follow us on social media at the Cycle365. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. It's the same handle for all of those things. Make sure, I mean, if you're listening to us, you've probably already, you know, figured out where to find us, but for your friends, and make sure you share this because we have some great content coming out and continuing to come out even as, you know, the year goes on. But make sure you find us at the Cycle 365 on all major streaming platforms and YouTube as well. And yeah, give us a share, show us some love on everything on social media, on those streaming platforms. And yeah, I'm one of your co-hosts, Simon Voyenos.
I'm Kodey Stoffer.
And I am Liam Hughes.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Catch us next week when we will continue our episodes, also the mini series, because this week we're taking a break from the mini series.
We are taking a break from the miniseries. Catch you next time.